For the record again, Richard Durr, Leisure Services Director. Wanted to give you a very brief overview of where we are on Rolling Hills, and this is probably a great time to introduce the team again. Bill Pandos, who you met previously. Keith Welty is our project manager on the Seminole County side, and then with us today is Pete Seckler. He's the director of GAI Community Solutions Group, and Keith Oropeza is also in the crowd with us that worked on the design for the master plan. I'm going to give you a very brief overview, and I promise it'll be brief. An update on the project. The scope of services that we had for GAI was to basically put together the Phase 1 Trail and Park Master Plan. When I say Phase 1 Trail and Park Master Plan, last fiscal year, so the one we just left, we had $2 million set aside out of the Transportation Penny Tax Fund for design and construction of a trail system at Rolling Hills Park. This fiscal year we just moved into is another $2 million. So we've roughly have about a $4 million pot of money that we've allocated, that you've allocated, towards the development of the trails at this location. So we've asked them to come up with the detailed master plan of that fit within our budget. And at the same time, we said there's a lot of other things that have been tossed around as future potential projects at this location, such as a dog facility or a dog park of some way. One of the things that we asked them to do is to make sure that as we're setting the table, and we're putting the sort of the bones and the structure together of the park, and that's exactly what the trail system will be at this location, is that we're still looking forward into the future, that we haven't boxed ourselves in, that we've still left the ability for us to develop future elements at the park as funding becomes available, and one of those things they looked at was a potential dog facility. We're not asking you to take any action on that future plan whatsoever. That is completely a forward-looking plan that allows us to refine that over time as funding becomes available. So I wanted to be very clear on that. The thing that we are asking you for, however, today is on the Phase 1 Trail and Park Master Plan, and Pete's going to walk you through that in just a moment to show you all the ins and outs of that one. And then we wanted to show you how we then also adapted, and this came before you several months back, where we had to change the scope to then turn to another online platform that's slightly different, but it had some of the similar types of features to it. So for folks that aren't familiar with the process, a very brief overview. The Rolling Hill Golf Club closed in 2014. The public got involved and asked the county to look at the possibility of acquiring the facility. We had another grant that was working through the Florida Communities Trust, or FCT. We looked at transferring that grant to this location. It took us several years to do that, working hand in hand with the neighborhood as well as the state. We found some environmental issues out on the property that needed to be remediated. And the neighborhood came forward and agreed to basically pick up that tab and tax themselves for $1.5 million to clean up the property and fix the environmental issues that were there. So once we're able to do that and secure the necessary commitments from the state, the property was acquired on August 31st, 2018. At which point the real work started, and over that amount of time, the county has been a caretaker of that facility. So we've gone through a lot of cleanup out on the property, analysis on all of the existing features that were left and decaying from the golf course. We had demolished a number of items throughout there. While we were doing so, we were also doing our due diligence on the property for the redevelopment of this property as a passive park. So everything from looking at adjacencies to the facility to making sure we had locations of utilities marked and understood the topographical issues out on the property and some of the environmental issues that we've dealt with out there as well. One of the things that we wanted to make sure that we did too was develop a vision for the development of the park. And we put up our arms around the idea of sort of the classic American park design by Frederick Law Olmsted. And that the idea is it wouldn't look like we'd come in and create a park out of just whole cloth, that we would work with the property to make it look like that this property has evolved this way through actions of natural forces. And we had a big meeting with you back in January of 2019 talking about all of those details of the vision. Now, we got to see through this current pandemic how important spaces like this have become, where we've seen a massive explosion in the number of folks that are frequenting our parks, and especially this type of passive facility, where folks really, you talk about recreating, it's really recreating. They're able to refresh themselves of being out in nature, and we've seen nationally how important that has been to the general public, and as well as here in Seminole County. that we've got such a variety of different natural areas and ecosystems that we could restore here on this property. We've got 80 feet of fall basically across the entire property, going from wetlands all the way up into some high-end dry land, and making sure that as we restored those areas, we would pay attention of doing so within those natural systems. Likewise, whatever we built there, we wanted to make sure that we were doing so with the sensitivity of just as much of the ecological environment as we were as the built environment. That we're really trying to set the table for folks to have memorable times and memorable places here at the facility. So we want to be just as delicate with how we treat that going forward. So this is a shot right now of just some of the activity that's going on the local streets. So this is the kind of activity that we're embracing in the neighborhood and being made available to the rest of Seminole County. Now, when we worked with GAI, they looked at some guiding principles, if you will, of how we would approach design, of how we would enhance different view sheds and maybe screen unfavorable views. But really, the overall idea was following through on our promise of the vision of this place and making sure that even the design of the trail was respectful of that vision. So again, we met with you in January of 2019 with the idea that we would create this community park that would be very distinct to Seminole County and to all of Florida going forward. So with that in mind, GAI was able to work with our staff to then refine that plan and really program it down to the topographic survey that was done over the entire property. And then they were able to cast forward and look forward into the future to say, if this is how we design the trail system today, where would all of those other things, if we were to develop them over time, where would they land? And in this case, we showed things such as there's been discussion of maybe a community building where the clubhouse used to be, or a playground, or a dog park, or disc golf, or where would those things happen? And making sure that those ideas would still work sometime in the future as funding and as desire to develop these ideas became available. So with that, we put together all of this into another platform. This is a slightly different one. It's more GIS based, and this was very helpful to us as we asked folks to comment on the system. But this was launched as well on September 2nd, so we had a grand opening of 2 different online platforms. This is one, again, that we wanted to zoom into the actual Seminole County zip code. So we had 1,384 individuals looking at just this property alone and this project alone. There were many more web hits from all over the place, but these are the ones that we were really zooming in on as we go. And as we wrap up the project, you'll be able to see all that data as well. This process also had the ability for you to understand a little bit more about the project, to take a look at the vision, the overall vision for the process, as well as the phase 1 plan, and then your ability to participate and leave meaningful input. So in this case, we had 5 shorter, well, slightly longer videos on the website that you could watch at your leisure. It was completely on demand. Overall, taking you through the history of the project to the master plan vision and the development of the trail system on this property. Likewise, we had an interactive map so that you can zoom into and then leave your pinpoint comments on the map. Positive, negative, whatever you had on your mind, you can leave that there for us to be able to take a look at as we went forward. We went through the same process of getting the word out. So this had weekly checks going on as well to see what kind of response we were getting from the public. And we made sure that these were going out, these bulletins were going out, just as well as the overall trail system. And by linking the two, we are able to tie those two things together that understand you are talking about a trail system at Rolling Hills as well. So that sets the table for the tour around the site, and I'm going to vacate this spot so that Pete can sit here.
Thanks, Rick. Good afternoon. My name is Pete Seckler. I'm the director of the Community Solutions Group at GAI.
Welcome.
And I am from Ohio, and I've been to Cleveland.
Oh, yeah, glad to have you here. Welcome.
30 years ago this month, I started my career in Central Florida. And one of the great things about not being from Florida is that you really want to understand Florida. And so to me, just learning about the ecology of Florida, the community of Florida, the things that are that make Florida special to me have been such a rewarding thing to really study and not take anything for granted, but actually try to really study and understand. I'm going to go very quickly. I'm hoping that many of you saw the videos, so you've probably heard me drone on way too long. You know all my thoughts. I'm hoping that folks that are on the line saw those thoughts. Essentially, as Rick said, our goal was to build upon the 2019 plan, and while we do that, accomplish a couple of things. We need to create a framework around which future investments can be made consistent with the vision, but also deliver a really great phase one plan with 4 miles of connected trail, so that on day one, when you do that phase one, you've really got a great community asset. We also need to hook in the various program elements that are associated with the Florida Communities Trust Partnership, and we've done that. And we also wanted to work in concert with the planned traffic calming and pedestrian crossing improvements and so forth around the perimeter of the property, Palm Springs Drive, North, Raymond, et cetera. To walk through the property just very, very quickly, we've got the center at Lake Jeanette where the old golf clubhouse was. That breaks off to the left to the Arboretum Walk, to the right, moving up into the more sort of rolling area of the property. And really sort of thinking about how can we take advantage, how can we take the things that make the site special and turn them up? How do you make something that's rolling more dramatic? How do you make something that's low and wetland oriented really more natural, as Rick said, to sort of develop this as if it truly was created by nature? So the opportunity to really reclaim the littoral edge of that lake wetland environment and allow people the chance to go down and really explore it, I think is what the design is about. Where do those opportunities exist? So walking around the park, we start to articulate the different types of spaces. We start to subdivide some of the fairways. A golf course is a beautiful place, but if you think about it, it's all really pretty much the same thing. It's several hundred feet of open fairway in the middle and a few trees on the side and some well-placed obstacles. So this is about beginning to compose views that create outdoor rooms where people and families can have different types of experiences over the next 100, 200 years on this property. This will be a park in perpetuity. I know it was mentioned earlier about the dog park. I actually agree. I think Daytona Avenue is possibly not the best location for that, and there are other alternate sites. And as Rick said, we're not really voting on the long-range plan right now. We're voting on the phase one plan, which is the trail. There are some places on the trail where we have to solve some particular issues, and this is one looking down towards Lake Jeanette where we've got a significant amount of grade change. So this is a place in phase one where we think we can come in with one of our more sort of developed park features, if you will, which is this terrace walk area. So on the right, the trail will go downhill, but if you want to take an ADA acceptable route and also have an environmental and a learning experience per the FCT grant, this is an opportunity to sort of break off the trail and have an experience like this that can be very, very special. And we really think when you look at the long-term vision that we drew, whether you agree with every little aspect of the vision or not, I think the point is that we see dozens of these types of opportunities over the next 20 years, or however long it is as you develop this park. You've got some powerful landscapes at the areas called the Geyer and the Grasslands, where we really get into some dramatic landforms. And this is kind of the slide I'd like to sort of conclude this part of the presentation on, which really says that we believe that by locating the trail, using the landform that we have, amplifying the tree canopy where we can in phase one, we really can create a wonderful passive park that is great for exercise, it's great for people of all abilities, and it can be a location for all different types of play. So the phase one park is really tied to this phase two vision, and what I want to conclude with is I want to kind of cut to the chase on what some of the comments were that we heard. First of all, I do want to say something about positive comments. There's an enormous amount of positive comments that we received, just about the whole endeavor and the whole sort of philosophical approach to this process that began with your 2019 plan. And so before we get into the things that we want to maybe adjust, I think it's important to recognize that we really fielded a lot of positive remarks about this, and we think the community is very excited about what this property can bring. But to get to the point, there's a few things that people are concerned about. There's concerns about traffic and speeding on Andrews Drive. There's concern about sort of locations of cut-through traffic, for instance, on Palm Springs Drive. Placement of where should you put a parking lot? Where should the central parking lot, so to speak, be? Maybe distributing parking, trailheads, and then some things about some future stuff like dog parks and stuff that really aren't on the table for today. So what I wanted to do is sort of take those things down kind of one by one, and really kind of focus on some core areas where most of the orange dots showed up. I think these are actually pretty simple questions to respond to. The most complex really is this issue in the center. And our thought process in the center was that the current parking lot for the old golf course really is no longer viable. The asphalt's not viable, the subbase isn't viable, it needs to be replaced. And our thought was to just create a new parking lot immediately to the west that could branch off and serve new activities and keep the old golf course clubhouse site completely clear to keep all options open for a new community building. That's why we did that. We just said, well, let's not touch that site. Let's go over here. And then when the county is ready to really do that project, they've got a completely open palette. But we recognize the concerns, and we think that if you look to the right, there's a very reasonable way to go in here. This was the old golf clubhouse, was right about where I have the cursor, if you can see that. And we think we can go in and essentially just rebuild the old parking lot in its existing location. And we can do it in a way that makes sort of a zigzag where it's not really a cut-through route. Right now you can just kind of fly through there on an S-curve, if you will. And we can,
Yes, you can.
we can make that behavior something that is much more deliberate. You're clearly going to be going through a parking lot, and in fact, we can actually design this as sort of a shared space for cars and pedestrians, so that when you come in here as a motorist, you truly are in the park. You're not just cutting through a parking lot. So that, to me, is the first quick answer. Another question that came up, now I'm over on Raymond, I'm down by Raymond and North. There were some people that were uncomfortable with the idea of locating a small trailhead, particularly with a few car parks between the homes that are on Raymond. You have a house at the corner of Raymond and North. You have another residence just up the way. There's an open space. We think that open space should be a way to get into the park, but we accept the critique that maybe that's not the place to allow cars to come in and park. We did look at other opportunities for trailheads on North, but there's a triangle of land here where it says acreage. This is about a half acre, a long sliver of land that the county does not own. So we really couldn't work off North very easily in that location. So what we have done instead is we're proposing, you have the area farther down on North where you have the existing cap, and we think we can come in here and basically just clean up that concrete cap, put a very, very small parking opportunity there, 6 to 8 cars, and allow bicycles as well as cars come in, take a secondary path, come up the hill through the trees, and come down to Lake Jeanette, just as a very, very minor modification to the plan, so that there is a southern entrance to the park. Finally, comments about cut-through, and I think our short response to that is the county's already on top of that. You've got a fantastic program. It's happening on another channel through Transportation and Public Works. And what we believe is important about the traffic calming work that you're doing is it's going to make driving through the park at this location as a motorist, you will be entering the park, and the park will perceptually be going across the road. So it's not like you have park, road. It's going to feel like the road is entering the park environment on the park's terms. And I think that's incredibly important from a traffic calming point of view and a bike ped point of view. So we have a revised master plan, which you can see here. Again, it's really the primary trail and the primary kind of structural formation of the creation of outdoor rooms that can be continually vegetated over time. And we have a budget for this. And I'd like to explain the budget a little bit. This is a little bit confusing. Let me actually start down here at the $4.31 million number. If we take all of the improvements that we have identified as capital construction items, we think that's about $3.87 million, and that includes a 15% contingency. And then if we add design and permitting costs to that, you get $4.31 million. Now, how did you get to that? We think there's two major components to the park if you think about building the park. One is the primary trail system, the 12-foot trail, the grading, and the other things that kind of come with building the 4-mile 12-foot trail. That's about $2.25 million. Then there's all the other stuff. There's the secondary trails, there's the Florida Communities Trust elements, there's educational signage, there's ADA access, and so forth and so on. We think that's about $1.62 million. So if you add the 2.25 and the 1.6, you get the 3.87 of capital construction. The notation that we have here on the Florida Communities Trust Program, there's about $1 million worth of program items that are associated with the FCT grant, but really that $1 million is covered or included in the primary trail, the 2.25, or the other park amenities, the 1.6. So these three numbers here are not necessarily meant to be additive. This is a little confusing, and I apologize for that. The point is that we think altogether this is about a $4.3 million project, including all the soft costs, and have just been excited and thrilled to work with the team on it. Thank you.
And I'll own that. This is what happens when a director plays with a slide at the last minute, thinking they got the whole thing down and making a boo-boo. So this is
No. Let the consultant take the.
Yeah, he's from Cleveland.
Yeah, I know. What do I even know? I'm from. Yeah, really. No kidding. No kidding. So anyway, it's been our privilege to work with the team on this, and
Good
we're
job.
very excited about it.
Well done.
Thank you. Questions,
Good
comments?
stuff.
Anything that we can do?
Do we have, Clint, anybody on the line that's desires to talk about number 12, the Rolling Hills Master Plan?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll go to the board. Commissioner Lockhart?
Well, I just want to say thank you for being so responsive and listening to the citizen feedback. That is, I don't think you realize how wonderful that is for us. When the people that we've hired listen, it's incredibly wonderful. I know
Amen.
that
Amen.
might sound like a strange compliment, but it doesn't always happen, I
No,
assure you.
I believe in that very deeply.
Yeah.
This is not our park, this is Seminole County's park, and we need to respect. You know, we always feel like as professionals that we have the opportunity to share our ideas, but at the end of the day, it's the community's park, and we need to be sensitive to that.
It's a wonderful vision. It's
Absolutely.
beautiful. You've
Spot
done
on.
a great job.
Good job.
Commissioner Constantine?
Thank you. I think you get a sense of how important it is to the citizens that live there. We understand that this is a county-wide park, and I know that there's citizens throughout that area that are in both Commissioner Lockhart and my district that are just chomping at the bit to use that park. But the people that live there really have invested time, sweat, and money to for this. And so to see this starting to come into fruition is such a, just exciting. It really is. Those pictures, I hope we can translate them to the real vision because they were beautiful.
Thank you.
And I know that the folks there will be extremely excited. As is always in events like this, there is continually rumors flying. And this, since 2014, there has been rumors flying all over. I was just talking to the county manager yesterday. I got 2 individuals that sent back concerns to me saying, we've heard that there's going to be development on I said, guys, we just bought it. How can you say that? But as we go through this process, Rick and everybody, continue to tell them that with our agreement with
FCT.
yeah, we can't do any, and we don't want to do anything, but we couldn't even if we wanted to. And that what they're seeing on these pictures is actually the vision that we want to turn into into fruition. Now, we all know some people want a golf course or some people want, this or that, and we will talk about some of those amenities as we go along. But the park itself, and as you talk about the trail that you're developing, that is the backbone of this. That's going to make it, work. And it's very exciting. We all know that we have to take care of those, and I think that we've done a great job between the roads and the trail and the parks, working to make sure that we take care of the people's concerns on Raymond, on North, on Palm Springs. So it seems to all be coming together. The only thing we still have to worry about is, who really wants or doesn't want the dog park. But more importantly, that these folks know that this is going to happen. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but this is going to happen. And you guys done a great job.
Good. Commissioner Delory, you had your hand raised.
I'm not going to repeat what Commissioner Lockhart and Mr. Constantine said. I agree with all their comments. The only thing that I'd like to add to it is that you alluded to the fact that there is a public works project, which we all know there is. I'd like to see somewhere in that web page site a link to it so people understand that the two of them are coexisting
Oh,
and
sure,
the two of them
yeah.
are working together, and so they're not separated, hand in glove, so to speak. And it'd be nice if there was a description or a little bit outline of why it's important that they're both happening simultaneously but separate, but here's the link to see it.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Otherwise, spot on so many different levels. Thank you.
Good,
Well
thank
done.
Great. Well, I'm not going to repeat what everybody just said. I would just mirror everything that's already been said. What a great job everybody's done. I would very much be remiss if I didn't just state and remind, we're very interested in native foliage
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
landscaping. I saw some of the renderings weren't quite Florida palms.
Save water.
There were a couple of, we tried to get all the anomalies out of there.
And I got to just ask,
All that grass, fertilizer.
yeah, right. Really? We had a pit bull being walked by a resident on the trails?
Did I not catch that?
Change it to
I pay attention to those little
a collie
minute
or
details.
something.
Maybe a lab or something.
A lab would be in the water already.
Yeah, right.
Right,
Okay.
Amy?
That was a real picture, though, I think, of the real.
That was a real picture.
Yeah, those are people who live there, so.
Oh, my
so
goodness. Okay.
I could offer up a golden doodle or two.
Right. Anything else from the commission?
I-
Anything from anybody in the audience?
I have a question for the commission.
Sure.
Because I think what Rick wants is a very definitive go forth and conquer on Phase 1 as it's proposed. We have the money budgeted. We'd like to really start to pull the trigger on it. So that's our ask of you today is to, for Phase 1, we know that there are other elements, but what they showed you for Phase 1 today, Rick's ready to get moving on.
Mr. Chairman,
Chair,
I
we
believe-
entertain a
I believe
motion.
this- Do you want a motion?
Which
Mr.
is the trail, right?
Mr. Motion, make
Correct.
a motion to approve Phase 1 as presented to us here
Second.
today.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Commissioner Lockhart?
Aye.
Commissioner Delory?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Constantine?
Yes.
Zembauer? Yes?
Thank
Any other input? Questions? None? Okay.